Let me ask you something uncomfortable. If you had been born just 100 years earlier, same dreams, same fears, same hopes, would you have survived adulthood? Not because you were weak, not because you made the wrong choices, but because history decided that your generation would be fed into a machine built for death. World War I is often remembered as dates, treaties, and maps changing color. But for the people who lived it, it wasn't history. It was mud, hunger, letters that never came back, and a quiet, terrifying realization that the world they knew was ending, and something darker was being born. This was supposed to be the war to end all wars. Instead, it taught humanity how to destroy itself on an industrial scale. Before 1914, Europe believed it was living at the peak of civilization. Empires were strong, science was advancing, railways connected cities, telegraph wires carried messages faster than ever before. Many people believed war, at least between civilized nations, was becoming obsolete. There had been wars, of course, but they were short, decisive, controlled. Kings were related by blood. Diplomats shook hands. Armies marched in bright uniforms with banners flying. People believed progress made them safer. They were wrong. The world that collapsed in 1914 was tightly wound with alliances, pride, and fear. Europe was divided into two major power blocks. On one side, the Triple Entente, Britain, France, and Russia. On the other, the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. These alliances were meant to prevent war. Instead, they guaranteed that when war came, no one could escape it. All it needed was a spark, and that spark came from a young man standing on a street corner in Sarajevo. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was assassinated by a Bosnian Serb nationalist named Gavrilo Princip. It was a single gunshot, but behind that gunshot were decades of tension, nationalism, imperial rivalry, ethnic resentment, and the slow decay of old empires struggling to control modern populations. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia, Germany backed Austria-Hungary, Russia backed Serbia, France backed Russia, Britain was pulled in to defend Belgium. Within weeks, Europe was at war. Millions of men volunteered enthusiastically. They believed the war would be over by Christmas. They believed it would be an adventure, a test of courage, a chance for glory. They had no idea what modern war actually looked like. What awaited them was not glory, it was trench warfare. From the North Sea to the Swiss border, armies dug themselves into the earth. Trenches stretched for hundreds of miles. Mud swallowed boots. Rats fed on corpses. Lice spread disease. Soldiers lived for weeks in cold, wet darkness, waiting for whistles that signaled another charge into death. The space between trenches was called no man's land. It was littered with barbed wire, shell craters, and the bodies of those who never made it back. To cross it was to gamble your life against machine guns designed to kill dozens of men in seconds. This was not war as humanity had known it. This was slaughter, mechanized and efficient. Technology had outpaced morality. Machine guns could fire hundreds of rounds per minute. Artillery shells rained down day and night, tearing bodies apart without warning. Poison gas drifted silently across battlefields, burning lungs and blinding eyes. Soldiers drowned in mud. They suffocated underground. They went mad from constant bombardment, a condition later called shell shock, though at the time it was poorly understood and often punished as cowardice. Commanders, far from the front, ordered wave after wave of men to charge positions they knew were almost impossible to take. Because the system demanded it, because stopping meant admitting the war made no sense. One of the most haunting truths of World War I is how ordinary people carried its burden. Farmers, teachers, clerks, artists. Young men who had never left their villages found themselves dying in foreign fields for reasons they barely understood. They wrote letters home filled with optimism at first, and then silence, then fear, then resignation. Families waited. Mothers prayed. Children grew up without fathers. Entire villages lost nearly every young man. This wasn't just a war between nations. By 1916, the war had become a contest of endurance rather than strategy. Battles like Verdun and the Somme lasted months. Hundreds of thousands died for gains measured in yards. At the Somme alone, The British Army suffered nearly 60,000 casualties on the first day. One day, the ground gained by sunset could be walked across in minutes. The price paid was irreversible, and yet the war dragged on because empires were afraid of losing face, because leaders feared revolution if they admitted failure, because once millions had died, stopping felt like betrayal of their sacrifice. This is the darkest logic of war. The more lives it takes, the harder it becomes to end. As Europe bled, the world watched. Eventually, the United States entered the war in 1917, not out of ancient hatred, but out of economic ties, submarine warfare, and the belief that it could tip the balance. Fresh American troops arrived. The balance shifted. Germany, exhausted and starving under blockade, began to collapse from within. In 1918, the fighting finally stopped. On November 11th, at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the guns fell silent. After 4 years of slaughter, the war was over, the world exhaled. But peace was another matter. World War I killed more than 16 million people. It toppled empires that had existed for centuries. The German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Russian Empire. Maps were redrawn. New nations were created. Old grievances were frozen into borders that satisfied no one. The Treaty of Versailles punished Germany harshly, humiliating a defeated population and planting the seeds of resentment. Leaders believed they were securing peace. In reality, they were building the foundation for another war. The tragedy of World War I is not just its scale, but its lesson ignored. It proved that industrialized war could destroy entire societies, that nationalism could override empathy, that technology without restraint could outpace human wisdom. And yet, within a generation, the world would do it again, with even deadlier consequences. So why does World War I still matter to you? Because it shaped the modern world more than almost any other event. It led to the rise of fascism, it led to the Russian Revolution, it set the stage for World War II, it transformed how governments treat citizens, how wars are fought, and how trauma is understood. It showed us that progress does not automatically make us moral, and that is a lesson we are still struggling to learn. Perhaps the most haunting part of World War I is the hope people had at its end. They called it the war to end all wars. They believed humanity had finally seen the cost of violence clearly enough to turn away from it forever. They were wrong, but that hope still matters, because it reminds us that even in the darkest moments of history, people wanted something better. They wanted a world where children didn't grow up learning the sound of artillery. The question is not whether they failed, the question is whether we will. World War I is not just a story about the past, it is a warning, a reminder that civilization is fragile, that reason can be drowned out by pride, and that once violence becomes normal, it spreads faster than anyone expects. History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it echoes. And whether those echoes become lessons or prophecies depends on what we choose to remember. And if this story made you pause, if it made you feel the weight behind the dates and numbers, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep human explorations of the moments that shaped our world, don't forget to subscribe, because history isn't just about what happened, it's about what happens next.